Hello, guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Vijeta, and today we shall be continuing with our logical reasoning questions. As you can see, I have used people from Elizabeth the Musical. It's a German play, and yeah, it's Mark Sebert and Annamike. I can't pronounce her name, but yeah. So, anyways, let us begin. Which type of fallacy assumes that because two events are correlated, one caused the other? It's post hoc ergo propter hoc. Now, why is that? Because the post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy assumes causation based merely on sequence. If event A happens before event B, it wrongly concludes that A must have caused B. And it happens a lot in our lives also. We think that this happened, that is why this happened. But it's not always true. It's kind of a fallacy. You always think that because this happened, because I went there, and that is why this thing happened to me, or any situation, and because I went there and that happened, and that is why he was angry, and that is why he lost his appointment, or a lot of things. So that is something claiming that one must either support strict gun laws or oppose public safety. It's actually an example of a false dilemma fallacy. Because a false dilemma presents only two options when more exist, creating an oversimplified and misleading argument. And it is happening a lot, I think. If you see current in the current events, all this people are becoming either this or that. Like everything is happening in a black and white way. People are not opening to nuances. They have become more and more rigid, and it is because maybe it is because people are not wanting to go into a depth of something. They don't want to persevere to find out the depth of a situation, and it's happening with everything, whether it's anything, even feminism or any issue, that the racism that is happening against Indians. All of these issues have this problem that people are working under false dilemma. So that is something. The appeal to emotion fallacy relies on eliciting emotional responses to persuade an audience. Now, emotional arguments are not always invalid and can support logical conclusions. See, the thing is that if you think about it, the explanation for this question is that appeal to emotion is fallacious when it replaces reason. Not all emotional appeals are invalid. They become a fallacy only when used in place of logical reasoning. So emotions have their place, but it is not justified when you use your emotions to replace logic. And I come back to the previous argument of, all of these are connected: the false dilemma and the post hoc ergo propter hoc, all of these fallacies that are overtaking us. uh, Most of them are also because of this emotional fallacy that is replacing logic. We are becoming more and more dependent on emotional arguments, emotional fallacy, because maybe we don't want to go into the logic of it, and because it requires work, it requires going into the nuance, and which is why problems in our country or even in the whole world, they are increasing. The attacks on Indians or any such problems that are increasing, the radicalization of males or females, all of these problems are because of these fallacies. So you can understand why we are having such a shift in our perspective of life. So that is something. Using ambiguous language to mislead the audience, it's an example of an equivocation fallacy. A lot of people do that. If they have a great command over language, they use this fallacy. See, the equivocation fallacy occurs when a key term or phrase in an argument is used ambiguously, leading to confusion and misrepresentation of the argument. Sometimes you can say a word, and if it turns out to be problematic, you just go back from it and you say, no, no, I meant that, because the word that you are using is very ambiguous, very vague. You are not clear as to what you are trying to say. You can use a synonym of a word, and then when people start suspecting you, oh my god, what is that racist or is that very radical, you can always go back and say, no, no, this is what I meant. So that is an example of an equivocation fallacy. The genetic fallacy dismisses an argument based on its origin rather than its merit. This fallacy does not always involve personal attacks. See, the genetic fallacy focuses on the source of an argument rather than its content, but it does not necessarily involve personal attacks. Sometimes it does, but most of the times, genetic fallacy has this origin thing. The origin of something, if it's questionable, it's just the whole argument is dismissed. So that is that. The bandwagon fallacy argues that something must be true or right because many people believe it. This fallacy appeals to the popularity of a belief as evidence for its truth, which is actually a very well known thing, and you won't have any problems in understanding that. Because, see, the bandwagon fallacy, also known as ad populum, uses the popularity of an idea as evidence of its validity, which is not logically sound. See, popular does not always mean good. The popularity of Botox and all these things increased, and people were like, "Ah, everybody is doing, we should also do." But that does not justify the harms or the pros and cons of any kind of treatment. So sometimes popularity or popular is not always good. So that is something. Drawing a conclusion based on insufficient evidence, that is hasty generalization. Attacking a distorted version of the opponent's argument, that is a straw man. Assuming causation from a mere sequence of events, that's post hoc fallacy. Criticizing the person making the argument instead of the argument itself, that's an ad hominem. It is run a lot, actually. You think about it, especially in politics all over the world, and it kind of strays your mind away from the cause or from the issue at hand, and make you wonder about the personal life of the person or persons involved. We must continue the tradition because it has always been followed. That's an appeal to tradition fallacy. If we ban cars, everyone will lose their jobs because, they won't be able to go to their office or something like that. That's a slippery slope fallacy. You assume things. God exists because the Bible says so, and the Bible is true because God exists. That's a circular reasoning. You either support this policy or you oppose national progress. That's a false dilemma. Only two options. You shouldn't eat meat because celebrities are vegetarian. That's a false cause. Sure, the environment is important, but what about the economy? That's a red herring, when you are distracted from the main point, you know. You should believe this because the majority supports it. It's a bandwagon. I can't trust this research because he went to a low ranked university. I can't trust his research because he went to a low ranked university. That's a genetic fallacy, having a problem with the origin. It's not a personal attack, but you see, the origin of the person is being put in question because of the university that person went to. So that's a genetic fallacy. Attacking the person, that's an ad hominem, as we discussed. Presenting a weak version, that's a straw man. Arguing that two options are the only possibilities, again, a false dilemma. Claiming that something is true due to a lack of evidence, that's appeal to ignorance. If A happens, then B, C, and D will inevitably follow. That's a slippery slope. Everyone does it, so it must be right. That's a bandwagon, as we discussed. The evidence against my claim is flawed, so my claim must be true. That's an appeal to ignorance. You shouldn't trust his opinion because he's always wrong. That's an ad hominem. You are attacking the person. Which of the following is considered the first stage of argumentation in Indian logic? Nyaya. That's pratigna. In Nyaya philosophy, you see, pratijna refers to the proposition or the statement of the thesis. It is the initial stage where the proposition to be proved is presented. So, pratijna is like the first stage of argumentation. It's like the proposition or the statement of the thesis. It's important. Indian logic. What is the role of hetu in the Nyaya syllogism? It is the logical reason supporting the thesis. Hetu actually refers to the reason or cause provided to substantiate the claim made in the pratijna or proposition. It explains why the proposition is valid or true. So, hetu is like the reason of the particular thing that we are talking about. In the context of Indian logic, what does the term vyapti mean? The invariable concomitance between the middle term and the major term. See, vyapti refers to the invariable and universal relationship between the hetu, middle term, and the sadhya, major term. It is crucial for establishing the validity of the inference in Indian logic. Which one of the following is not a type of praman, means of knowledge, recognized in the Nyaya school? It's apta, that is trustworthy testimony. The Nyaya school actually recognizes four types of pramans, which is pratyaksha, perception, anuman, inference, upaman, comparison, and shabd, verbal testimony. Apt is not one of the formal means of knowledge. So, perception, inference, comparison, and testimony. Pratyaksha, anuman, upaman, and shabda or sabda. What is tark or tark in Indian logic? A mode of reasoning to remove doubts and establish a proposition. Tark is used to resolve doubts and clarify the truth by applying logical reasoning. We use that word tark a lot in Hindi. Unhone ye tark diya. It is often employed to arrive at a consistent understanding of a proposition. In Indian epistemology, which praman is used to understand knowledge obtained from analogy or analogy of comparison? That's upaman. See, upaman refers to knowledge derived from comparison or analogy. For example, understanding that a wild ox is like a domestic cow based on their similarities. So that's an upaman when you compare. The term pratyaksha in Indian logic is best described as direct perception or immediate knowledge. Pratyaksha refers to knowledge obtained directly through sensory perception without the involvement of inference or testimony. So, pratyaksha is like directly what you perceive through your senses. That's pratyaksha. Which of the following is a Hitvabhasha fallacy of reason in Indian logic? That's Swarupa Siddha. Swarupa Siddha refers to a fallacy where the nature or characteristic of the middle term hetu is absent, making the reasoning invalid. See, middle term is absent, so the reasoning becomes invalid. That's the fallacy, Swarupa Siddha. Which of the following means of knowledge, praman, is not recognized by the Buddhist school of philosophy? That's sabda. The Buddhist school actually recognizes only two pramans, which is pratyaksha, perception, and anuman, inference. Shabda, verbal testimony, is not considered a valid means of knowledge by the Buddhist school of philosophy. Only praman, that is knowledge, and perception, which is pratyaksha, that is what is recognized by the Buddhist school. The anuman, inference in Indian logic, is classified into how many types? 3 actually. Anuman is actually classified into 3 types based on its nature, which is purvavat, prior inference, sesavat, posterior inference, and samanya todostra, Samanya Todrist, Samanya Todrist, I think. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, which is commonly observed inference. So, three things: prior inference, posterior inference, and commonly observed inference, which is Puravavat, you can understand with prior and P, Sesavat, posterior inference, that this you have to remember, and Samanya Tudrasta, which is commonly observed inference. Samanya means common, so you might remember it with that. Okay. See, I have written it here also. Purvavat from cause to effect, Sesavat from effect to cause, and Sambhava by analogy. Actually, there were two books and they both had different things. So, what I told you was written in one book, and this is from another piece. If you have any thing about the validity of this text, you can comment and I can do the corrections or write it down in the details section. Now, each type plays a crucial role in the philosophical discourse, allowing scholars to draw conclusions based on observed phenomena and their relationships. The Purvavat inference involves predicting an effect based on a known cause, such as anticipating rain by observing dark clouds. So, what I will do is I will wind up here, and I hope you liked the lecture. Like, share, subscribe. Feedback is always welcome, and I will meet you all in the next video. Thank you.